Welcome to another episode of Make Shit Happen. Today's guest is none other than Manny Diaz, 25 years old from Puerto Rico, runs a content marketing agency, used to be a mechanical engineer, but then realized his alignment wasn't with that and turned into business on the social marketing space. Manny specializes in content marketing and has gone through a lot of different opportunities in business, from selling his clothing company at 20 years old to then buying another business at the age of 22, and is addicted to self-awareness. Manny, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sam. I'm super excited to be here because the last time we talked, we just kind of started to meet, and I immediately felt like you and I had a lot in common, and I could not wait to be able to have like a longer period of time where we could actually connect and we could actually talk about like what life looks for us, and then how I could potentially be able to help you and your audience and be able to be of service. So it's a pleasure to be here, man.
Absolutely, man. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, man. I'm super excited about this episode because we're talking about something that I have a lot of interest in, a lot of questions, and it is something that a lot of people do struggle to understand. So let's jump right into it, Manny. What I want to know is how did you get into this space? Why did you get into it?
So this all started because as a young entrepreneur, you kind of start to ask questions about what is the best opportunity for me. A lot of us start to think about where is our time best spent to earn the most money and things like that. I decided that, to me, the ultimate dream of mine would be the guy that buys and sells companies, right? To me, that's like the sexiest thing I could think of. So I decided to become like a little bit of a mergers and acquisitions kind of enthusiast, I guess you could say. So I'd be coming to different people with my own business experience, to people that didn't exactly have business experience. And I decided to kind of start to test out different bounds, to test out different industries. And throughout one of these endeavors, I actually met up with a man named Shahab. Shahab is someone that you and I both know, who is the owner of the content marketing agency. And I decided I would help him a lot. He had a lot of questions about business. He didn't really have much of an in-depth understanding about process, about really how to get himself out there and how to actually close clients and be able to be as marketable as possible. So I decided to kind of take that route and make a little bit of a deal with him. And I told him I'll run the agency. I'll be able to implement all those things that I've been teaching you over the last 2 years, and I'll maximize the best that you can get out of this agency. And since then, we've tripled in size, and we're still scaling. So that's amazing. And the part that really came into content was because, to me, part of this enthusiasm for wanting to buy and sell companies, when you're buying and selling companies, you need a fluent customer acquisition funnel, right? And who has an infinite and free customer acquisition funnel? Anybody with a personal brand. And I decided, you know what, I'm gonna go all in on this system. Content happens to be pretty expensive nowadays, so I decided, okay, well then let me do an equity play into this space and see how that results for my personal brand. So that's how I got into the space. And because I was already obsessed with content since years before, I don't watch TV, I watch YouTube, because not only am I educating myself, I'm also quite entertained. It's very competitive for those who are entertainers on the platform. And I was incredibly fascinated and started to study it, started to kind of really look into everything behind the scenes of what really makes a successful piece of content, and what it means to have a successful positioning on a platform. And it just kind of took me down this road where I really enjoy making content. I really enjoy helping people on how to optimize the best out of the content. And right now, nowadays, I help people monetize their audiences through their content.
Yeah, wow, because there's a lot to it. Like, it's not just as simple as I'm going to make you some pictures and photos. Like, there's a lot of, you got to understand the algorithm, you got to know what's working, and then you got to know how to talk to their audience, and all that sort of stuff. When it comes to I guess people starting off with a fresh business and they go make the Instagram account or the TikTok account, YouTube, Facebook. In your opinion, if someone that is starting off fresh with social media, how would you tackle this? Would you go across different platforms? Would you focus on just one platform? How do you view that?
So you're a very affluent businessman, so you understand what it means to have a target audience. A target audience, depending on what you're selling, will live on a specific platform in a majority part, right? So if you're selling above a certain age range, you'll find them on Facebook. If you're looking for someone within a much younger sector, we're talking about TikTok. If we're talking about anyone in their early 20s, we're talking about Instagram. So it all depends on where your target audience is, and you have to meet your audience in whichever platform it is that they spend their most amount of time on, right? Because you want to be exposed, or you want to be uh, in front of them as much as possible, or have the highest possibility of being in front of that person. So first step for me would be assess who you're really talking to and where that audience really lives. And I would firstly attack that audience and or that platform. And when it comes to the actual creation of content, most people will start to think, well, I'm going to do it like that guy. I'm going to do it like that guy. I like that guy. And then they kind of want to follow in their footsteps. My personal opinion is that you should test various different types of content and see which one sticks, see which one resonates with your audience, see which one attracts your audience. Because you might want to do some storytelling, right? Or you might want to be able to do some how-to videos, or maybe you want to do 5 tips for, right? Or you want to be able to tell them, this is an incredibly new hack, content hack, et cetera, right? Or top websites for blah, blah, part 5, right? So there's all different types. So you want to be able to test all of them, see which one works, because if you hedge all your bets on one specific type of content and it doesn't end up working for you, it's very dismotivating because you were so 100% certain that was going to work. So it's best to try a few different types and continue to test for about, I would say 6 weeks, until you think, okay, this one actually gave me quite the best result. And then you want to double down on that one, see how the next one does, and then the next one, and then maybe tweaking it a little bit, and then continue going down and learning from your steps. The best thing that anyone could do when they're creating content is journaling their success, or journaling every tweak that they made for every video that they have throughout their journey, because the process of elimination will tell you that if you did 5 videos with when you said, hey, my name is blah blah, and then the 6th video you just went right into the content, you didn't even introduce yourself, and the 6th one was the one that went viral, well, then that tells you that those 5 ones that have the intro, you should probably stop doing. You should probably stop introing, because that clearly gives you a better result. So that's essentially what I'm telling you. You journal what change you made that really resulted in a lot more views or a lot more exposure, and then continuing to take that and continuing to test it. It's an algorithm. It's all about numbers. It's all about how the audience or a broad audience reacts to what it is you're saying or what you're showing them, and then being able to navigate and double down on whatever's working.
Yeah, because I know how important like testing and split testing things is for a young business, because you don't know what works. I know one of the things that I did and I kind of got my content ideas from was looking at the bigger players in the market, like the Alex Hormozy and Grant and Jordan Belfort and all those kind of guys. And like one thing that I've noticed that they all do, especially Alex, is they do a lot of short form content and like, 20, 30-second videos where they just talk about one point and they just focus on that one point and they make it short, sharp, and impactful so people can understand it. In your opinion, like, should someone that is starting off be trying to emulate the type of content that those guys are doing, or should they look at it differently?
So there's 2 sides to this coin, right? So you either can take what's already working and do your best to continue to replicate what you believe is already working. And then the other part of it is if you're not being yourself, how long are you really going to last doing or putting up that image, right? So what I would best suggest is that you take what's working, you take it, and you maybe take a portion of it and then implement it into what you believe is resonates with you, right? And that way you'll be able to actually do what's working, but also be sustainable in the same at the same time.
Gotcha. Okay. So basically, if I'm hearing that correctly, it's do what resonates with you as a person in the business, but at the same time test what works, what doesn't work over a period of time, and then focus on what does work and double down on that.
So you want to take on with a grain of salt what is actually working, but it's not natural to you, and then you want to add a little bit of what is natural to you, because that's the best way to keep it as sustainable for your natural self while actually aiming towards getting results with what inspiration from what is actually working. But I don't suggest copying it, because you'll continue to try and try and try to emulate this person, and then you'll rack your head about why is it not working for you if it's working for them, and then you'll be easily dismotivated. And at the end of the day, content is a game of longevity, not necessarily a game of instant hits, right?
So let's say I'm posting on Instagram and TikTok, and I'm doing reels. How often should people be posting to their audience? Should it be once a day, once a week, twice every couple of days? Like, how often should you post? And with posting a certain amount of time, is it because the algorithm picks it up? Like, how does that work?
Good question. Good question. So my personal opinion is that the more you test, the more information you'll get, the more data you'll get, and the more of an educated decision you can make, right? So the more data you collect, the quicker, the faster you get to make decisions, right? I always suggest people who are just starting off to maybe start with 2 or 3 pieces of content a week, or so people who already have a routine, I want them to go for 4 to 5 pieces of content per week when I'm talking about Instagram. For TikTok, people continue to say that TikTok requires 4 posts per day for you to attempt to go viral and things like that. I've seen from my experience, you don't need that. You can do 1 post per day and you can still go like do some pretty good reach regardless, right? So if I'm talking about to raise your best chances of success, I would do post daily on TikTok. And then if you're just starting off, I would do 2 to 3 posts per week on Instagram, because on a very human level, everything that we do is a habit, right? So if we have a habit of coming home and the first thing I do is eat, that 7th day where you don't eat when you come home, your body's already programmed to be hungry, right? So when I'm talking about habits in this situation, I'm talking about you don't really have a routine yet where you're completely used to sitting in front of the camera, setting up, writing down content ideas, and then giving it 5 or 6 cuts towards making 1 video, right? That's a pretty rigorous process, and it can be quite frustrating for anybody who's starting. So I would aim towards a low amount of workload when it comes to creating that habit. Once you've created that habit over the course of maybe a month, your first month, that's when I would really start to scale up on your experience or scale up on your actual routine, where it does become more sustainable to actually become what essentially is a content creator. You're an entrepreneur, but you're doing it through the method of a content creation, right? So that's my best advice would be once a day on TikTok, maybe 2 to 3 times a week for anybody who's beginning. But more than anything, it's about creating that habit at the start so that you can actually set yourself up for success rather than burning out or being extremely bored or dismotivated by it in the very start.
Okay. Yeah. So like that's because I know for me personally, like I try to focus on the 2 platforms, which is TikTok and Instagram. And I guess with Instagram, I try to post a couple of times a week. And with TikTok, I'm now trying to post daily. But it's a lot of work, man. Like it's a lot of work to sit down, write the content, edit the video, and then you gotta make sense. You got to be able to talk properly. That can sometimes take 5, 6, 7, 8 attempts to get that done right, and it's very time consuming. When it comes to, I guess, gearing your profile to your customers, if you're somebody that is running an e-commerce business or a coaching business online, or you sell a product or service, in your opinion, what is one of the best ways to gear your profile to people when they see it? Like, should their bio be set up a certain way? Should people be trying to get verified? Like, when people look at your account and they for the first time they go and they look at your account, how would you set that up so people perceive what you do in the right way?
Okay, so very good question. And the reason why I believe that this question is going to touch a specific topic that most people would not expect is because social media, specifically Instagram, is more of a highlight reel than an authentic app, right? Or an authentic experience, right? So when when
Yeah.
you see someone's story, you kind of see their highlight reel. You're not talking about when they're walking their dog. You're not talking about when I was making breakfast. Like, you see when they're in the Lambo, when they're out at Las Vegas or in Miami, right? So taking that, you'll realize. So a lot of my clients have what's called giveaway followers. Giveaway followers are is a little bit of an epidemic that's been going on social media for a few years, in which people will sponsor a celebrity, and the celebrity will then refer followers in their direction, right? That doesn't necessarily result in the most engaged audience, but what it does get you is authority or credibility, because whether we like it or not, on Instagram there is a large amount of trust behind the follower metric, right? So after you get that K sign at the end of your followers list, at the end of your follower amount, it gets you credibility and authority more than you believe it to be. And I believe that that has gotten a lot of people in the door before in the first impression, rather than having to convince them to trust them. So just having that will become more trustworthy, will make you more trustworthy for clients. And apart from that, it's about having a very clean cut and organized look when it comes down to your Instagram profile. What do I mean by that? So when you have a picture of your dog, or a picture of a martini in front of the beach, or if you have a picture of your office building, it's pretty scattered when it comes down to the topics that you're touching. But when I'm talking about coaches, when I'm talking about a professional who's trying to sell a product, we want them to continue to have content where they will continue to exercise trust onto your image, right? A piece of content that will continue to position you as a professional. So when I'm talking about content for a coach, it would be more of like a picture of you on a Zoom meeting with someone, talking about the caption being like, I love it when my clients tell me about their first 10,000. Or it comes down to, okay, so coaching has led me to have this type of lifestyle, right? Selling the dream. And when it comes down to reels, you want to tell them about what are the things that nobody's going to tell you about coaching, because it gives you trust for people who are looking to get into that space. And they think, okay, well, then I'm going to get into the business with anybody. I want it to be the guy who's not going to put dreams in my ears, when the reality is that there are drawbacks in this situation. So for a professional, that's essentially what the content should be like. When it comes down to the bio, it should be very clear cut. When it comes down to your name, should have your name and what you do on it, right? Now, when it comes down to your actual bio, I would put what you do, where you're located, just to add a little bit of information about you, and then how you help people, right? I help people do this. I scale blah, blah, blah. I convert this. I create that. right? And then a call to action on the next line, because you never want to have to ask somebody to click the show me more button on your bio. You want it to be, as soon as they come into your profile, they should be easy. It should be as easy to read and it should be eye catching, right? So that's what I would put when it comes down to the bio. And the link, you want the link also to look trustworthy. Everything in this sector should look very trustworthy. The link itself should also not necessarily be like a docs.google/fj57s, etc. You want it to say, for example, my link says kiwimotion.com, period. Right? There is no kiwimotion/get started 123, right? That's not what it says. You want it to be clear cut and you want it to look professional.
Yeah, I guess like less is more, but being straight to the point with it. So when it comes to, you know, designing your grid per se in terms of how it looks and how it feels, I know a lot of people try to follow a pattern, and I know I did for a period of time, and then I kind of got to the point where I was like, oh, I can't be bothered with this. I'm just going to post what I want to post, and you know, it is what it is. But when it comes to, I guess, following a pattern, like some people might do a video, then a personal photo, and then a lifestyle shot, and then they'll follow that same pattern for every grid on their profile. Do you suggest that that's a good idea, or like what do you suggest?
I think that personally, I think that's a terrible idea. And the reason for that is because we are all creating content to be able to deliver value to our customers or deliver value to our audience. And we are still human, which means we have different schedules. We might have different locations where we're going to be at. We might have different experiences. Maybe I didn't have a podcast this week, but I did have quite a few different interviews on TV. And then the next month I spent doing podcasts. So it's going to be really hard to keep that structure when in reality, life is not that structure or that predictable. So when it comes down to your feed, I would just make sure it looks congruent. And by congruent, I mean it all follows the same theme. So people, from the moment they land on your profile, they should be able to tell what you do. And I don't necessarily mean by the images or the thumbnails. I mean from your profile picture to your bio to your name to what they're actually starting to perceive from you on your feed before actually clicking anything. Okay. And I would have it color schemed, have an aesthetic, and for it to be fluid, have the same tone of colors, always keep it on brand. Like you want to have a brand guideline where you have certain tones of red. You want it to be black and red. You don't want it to be purple and green all of a sudden in one of your posts, because it's going to look off brand and it's going to look unprofessional. And when people mistake being professional and unprofessional, that it being the conduct. But being professional also means having a good first impression, because a professional has trust. A professional has people who trust him, put their lives in their hands, right? So when you're a professional, it builds trust. When you're very casual, it leaves a lot of questions in people's mind, and it makes it hard for people to buy from you in a trustworthy way.
Yeah, like I know for me, when I go look at someone's profile, if things are all over the shop and I can't really tell what they do and it's a bit confusing, I kind of go, well, what the fuck's going on here? It doesn't make sense. But when I go onto someone's page and they're, say, young professional, or they run a content marketing agency like yourself, like when I went onto your profile, I knew straight away and it clicked, and I was like, oh, cool. Like this guy's page looks really good. It's professional. He's got a consistent theme going on here. Like I knew straight away. And that's, as you're talking about, having that consistent theme is very important, and people should be able to go onto your page within an instant and know exactly what it is that you do. And that's very important. When it comes to building a following in today's, content strategy and social media, and how the algorithm is just constantly changing, how does the average person in today's society build a following and do it consistently? And what does that look like? Like, should people be expecting, 10 followers a week? Should they expecting 100? Like, what expectancy should people be putting on themselves if they want to build a consistent following, and how should they look at that?
That's a really good question, because nowadays everyone likes to push the narrative that Reels is the only thing that works, or YouTube Shorts is the only thing that works. But if you've seen my page, you'll see that I am posting a lot of carousels as well. And this will lead down a little bit of a longer topic, which I want to touch on later. But carousels, it means you have to flip through the actual, like, all of the slides to be able to get all of the value, which means that a lot of people spend a lot of time
More
on my
time.
post.
Yeah.
And Instagram says, okay, if people are spending a lot of time in this post, then that means they're having a good experience. So I'm going to show it to more people. In my experience, I've seen people have really, really, really slow growth, and I've seen people have really fast growth, right? But it comes down to really these three types of content, right? So you have what's called hero content. Hero content is the type of content that any sort of broad audience would be attracted to, right? So I'm not talking about um, when I'm 1 hour into my sales call and I don't know what to do. That's a little bit too specific. You want to go for broad. It's more for very, very, very beginner level. So if you're trying to sell anything, try this as your first step, right? So something hero content is content that's made for an extremely broad audience and is very attractive and is meant to be able to get people into the first step of your funnel, which is awareness. And awareness means you want them to have an incentive to come into your profile and be able to check out your other content. Okay. So that's what hero content is. Then you have hub content. Hub content, or no, sorry, help content. Help content is content that helps your current audience get better, right? So being able to foster their skills, be able to foster their trust, and be able to foster their knowledge coming from your platform, right? Or your channel or your page. So that's going to be 5 steps to this, 6 steps to that. And then you're going to have what's called hub content. Hub content is content that is meant for a very, very small segment of your audience, which is very invested in you. And it's not meant to be for everybody. It's meant to be vulnerable. It's meant to be hard to watch, because it's a way of qualifying your audience into really being a loyal follower to you and really understanding who you are and what you're about. Because when someone's going to spend 5,000, 4,000, $7,000 on your program, or on your course, or on your service, they want to know as much about you as possible, and they don't want to see the facade. They want to see who's actually behind this impeccable image, right? Now, when it comes down to how much growth they should expect, there is an advantage to having your own personal uh, Instagram or your own personal profile where you have all your friends and family in when you're going to start, because that means you have automatic support, versus when you're starting a page from blank, you have no support, right? So the algorithms don't know you at all. They don't know what people's experience is like on your content. So for a page from zero, I have seen people go from just posting content. I've seen people go maybe 40 followers per month when you're just starting off from zero, because the algorithms don't really know you at all. When I'm talking about Instagram in particular, when you already have your own personal Instagram account and you are marketing it well, you are engaging with different niches, you're engaging with people on hashtags, engaging with people uh, on other posts within the niche, plus the engagement from your friends and family, you can expect growth maybe around 150 to 250 new followers per month, right? That's kind of around the rate that I'm in right now, because I've dedicated so many months to my clients' content and I was not dedicating much time to my content. So I started kind of to take my own personal account and then try to put it on brand for me, right? So that's a little bit of what I'm expecting. And reels can be very empowering for the people who are looking to gain a very broad audience and are looking to get as much reach as possible. However, if you have a very broad piece of content, you may reach millions of views. And if you have a very niche topic, then you're going to reach a much smaller sector because you are in its nature, your content is already qualifying the people who is watching it to be exactly the type of person who's looking for what you have to provide. So maybe that was a little bit hard to explain, but let me give you an example. If you say 5 ways I can increase my coaching business's sales, then you've immediately eliminated 99% of the world just by those first few words. So of course you're not going to get a million views talking about coaches because there's only maybe a few 100,000 coaches in the United States, for example, right? So the way that you address your audience is going to also filter out who is going to be receptive to it and who is not. However, for people who are targeting a really broad audience, you can expect quite a lot of growth, but really hard to monetize, or really hard to really be able to niche down what you're going to sell them. You would have to sell them something very generic, like budget repair or finance or health, right? So something like that, or relationships, something in the relationships niche. So I don't know if that answers your question. Kind of, as you can tell, I know a lot, and I love talking about this, so I kind of give long answers. But I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. It's a very in-depth topic to try and give a definitive answer on. There's a lot of moving parts to it. So, what I wanted to change over to now is when it comes to making content and content ideas. Where do you get a lot of your ideas from? Is it certain other apps? Is it through the web browser? Is it through other people's pages? Like some people that are struggling for content ideas, where would you suggest that they go and look to get some creativity?
That is a really, really good question. A lot of people think that content ideas come from thin air, right? They're just sitting in their computer and they're thinking, what could I potentially make content about? I think that it's always a good idea to be able to at least gain some inspiration from what you're currently consuming, right? Just like we mentioned earlier, what you're consuming is probably already working. So you should take with a grain of salt everything that you're consuming, and then write it out and then tweak it into what you're actually going to make. So for example, if I like to watch websites you didn't know existed, then if I'm in content marketing, I'll say websites content creators would love to have, right? So it's a little bit of a tweak of the same idea. And having and writing these down on a list, sitting down and dedicating 30 minutes to this will be able to net you maybe 30 ideas, right? So you just want to write them all down. If you're talking about like raw, like when I'm talking about completely raw outreach or completely raw search, that's what I would do. But where for a more targeted or a much, uh, yes, a more targeted form of doing that would be, I like to subscribe to what's called this gentleman. His name is Maxwell Finn, and Maxwell Finn has a subscription where he gives you reports on what are trends that are currently happening on TikTok, which are upcoming trending sounds that are coming up on TikTok, what are hooks that have been also working on TikTok that they give you monthly reports on, and you immediately have a bunch of content ideas just from that, right? It costs me $10 a month, and I read it. It comes in weekly. I'm sorry, it comes in weekly. So I read through them, and I'm like, okay, I like this one, I like that one, I like this one. I can see how that hook would definitely grab someone's attention, and from a broad perspective, and then you can start to grab ideas from there. That's a different way. There's also creators who dedicate themselves to giving people content ideas, and a lot of these platforms this might be a little bit of a content hack for most people, so people who don't know this, but when you are on the platform and you have your profile up and you're logged in, the, the platform will show you what it knows you engage with, what you like,
Mhm.
right? But when you go into these platforms from an incognito tab, right? In other words, basically, the platform doesn't know who you are at all. It doesn't have any data on you at all. It will give you the content that it will show to a completely new viewer that it is trying to hook into its app. In other words, it's going to try to show them the best of the best, right? So a little bit of a content hack is going into these platforms from an incognito tab and be able to see what are they showing to new viewers that they know is working. Because if I can make something that I know YouTube is going to love, then I want to be able to make content like that. Or if I know TikTok is showing people content like this, maybe I should show people the same type of content if I really want to go that much or gain that much viewership.
That's interesting. So if you go into an incognito tab, it doesn't show up your preferences in terms of what it knows you like. It shows you generalistically or holistically what's working on the platform.
Exactly right. You could probably open up right now an incognito tab on YouTube, and you'll see that everything has a lot of views. Everything is very enticing to watch. It is very broad, so it'll have news, it'll have some of its top creators, it'll have very generic content like uh, top 10 movies in the last decade that performed extremely well, or 10 of the sexiest movies in the last decade. And it'll be very generic, but you'll realize everything has a lot of views because the platform specifically loves that content and it wants to assume that the people who is coming to the platform are the same type of people who would engage just like everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting. I didn't know that. There you go. Another hack there, guys. When it comes to, I just want to now talk about, I guess, what you do in your business with your content strategy. What's, in terms of the content marketing and things like that, how do you help people? Like, what is it exactly that you do?
So just like we've mentioned over the last few minutes, content is not an easy endeavor. It takes discipline, it takes skills, it takes various skills, it takes editing, it takes kind of a little bit of uh, being prepared to be in front of the camera. It requires someone to be very good at public speaking. It requires someone to be good at storytelling. It requires someone to be good at content ideas, the ideation process.
Yep.
And a plus a few more, right? So when it comes to videography, when it comes to setting up audio, being savvy in devices as well. So it's quite a lot. So what we do is we like to automate the process for them. We like to eliminate more than 70% of the work or the skills that they would need typically to be able to actually produce content by taking on the consulting. We want to consult with them about their setup. We want to consult with them about what devices they're using. We would like to sit and have a meeting with our client and tell them, hey, okay, pose me as where you would post the camera, and then give me the background that you would normally use. And I'm going to tweak it. I'm going to help you put in rim lighting, key lights, back ambiance, maybe some decor, just with the things that you already have in your house, just to maximize the best out of your current space. And then we can work on improving it later. And then we also take in all the raw footage, and then we'll do all of the animation, motion graphics, captions. We'll do, what's the word I'm looking for? Some different types of films or stock footages that sometimes will complement the client's content, depending on the story that they're telling or the information they're giving. And then we also publish it to their social media for them. So for busy entrepreneurs like yourself, that has clearly a lot of better things to do than to be posting your own video, then we will take on that load for you. We'll write the captions and everything. And that typically helps or alleviates a lot of time and a lot of stress from a lot of a lot of entrepreneurs who have the goal of being able to focus on their business and expand on their craft, things that they actually know how to do. And that's how we help people be able to fulfill their purpose and grow their own businesses.
It's a big job, man, to do all that content for that many people. It's that would take a lot of time.
It does. Now I have the editor on my side, and then I also have to deal with the client on the other side. As easy as it sounds to gain a client, it's harder to keep a client. And by that I
Yeah.
mean like keeping them at our pace or keeping them at our routine. A lot of the time we have to request them to give us more content because sometimes we're editing at a fast pace and they will not necessarily film at as fast of a pace as we edit, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes that's also a little bit of a hey, a tap on the shoulder, like hey, I need some more content, just sort of as a reminder. So yeah.
So where do people find you, Manny? What's your website or what's your Instagram handle?
KiwiMotion.com. So it's key as in KEY, we as in WEE, and then motion.com all together. And
Motion.
that's going to be our intro page. And you'll be able to see what we offer, who we service, our qualifications, because we don't work with everybody. And we also intake people at a very steady pace to make sure that we can continue to provide the best quality service for our current clients rather than focusing on scaling when we need to make sure that our service is still top notch.
Yeah. Well, it's fantastic, man. Look, I just want to say thank you so much for dropping all these knowledge bombs today on social media. I know it's a huge topic that a lot of people struggle with because they just don't understand it or they can't be bothered to understand it. So, guys, if you do need any assistance with your social media marketing or content creation, hit Manny up. Manny, what's your personal IG handle?
My personal IG handle is Manny Diaz Biz, altogether, MannyDiazBiz.
Awesome. I'll have it in the show notes for anyone that's wanting to get in contact with Manny and just have a chat with him. I can't recommend him enough, guys. He is an absolute legend and just an absolute gentleman to talk to. So if you need any help with your social media content, hit Manny up. He is incredible. Manny, again, mate, just want to say thank you so much for coming on today and giving us your time to give us some more knowledge and insight into social media marketing.
Of course, Sam. It's an absolute pleasure. I'd love to answer any questions your audience may have. Don't hesitate to send me any questions. I'll be able to take a moment of my time to be able to bless anybody's day. And Sam, anytime, man. I'm here anytime. Anything for you, dude.
Awesome, Manny. Thanks so much.
Of course.
Just leave me alone.